Goeiedag and welcome. My name is Amareiske and today I will be doing a discussion video on reviewing books and my opinions on how a lot of people on BookTube review books, and especially in the more YA reading community, and why I think those videos are the least watched videos. I think this video is going to contain a couple of less popular or maybe even completely unpopular opinions, but I don't really care and I'm not going to put a disclaimer on it because it's an opinion and maybe some people can learn a bit about it. If you're offended, it's probably because you do certain things I talk about here and you care about what other people think about your reviews. So let's get started. I have my notes here and I will be looking at those from time to time because I want to make every point I wrote down here. I don't want to forget anything. Let's start with the main point is most of the reviews I come across are somehow from the YA community, even though I don't necessarily follow more of those kinds of channels. And also, those people are the people who usually complain the most about the reviews being the least watched videos. I mean, personally, I have that problem, if you want to call it a problem as well. Reviews are less watched, and I think it has to do something with how a lot of the BookTube community, especially, sorry you as Americans, especially you, because I follow a German channel specifically for the book reviews of those German books. And the channel is called Alles Allerlei, but you Americans won't know what to do with it because it's a German channel and you will probably not understand what she's talking about, but she does amazing book reviews. It's literally, we call it here een recensie or een recension. It's literally a literature critic. It's so specific on certain points, nothing really misses. Like, they give examples of what the person does and doesn't like in the book, specifically in the writing. If it is repetitive, there are examples given of what is the repetitive part of the writing. If the characters are disliked, the specific parts of the characters that are disliked or annoying are mentioned. And so goes with the plot and the writing too. If someone doesn't like it, it's mentioned. I come across certain of those reviews on BookTube as well. They seem to be decently watched, and I enjoy watching them because I viewed certain of those for the Andromeda Saga, how it's called, Zenith, over the last couple of weeks because I was curious what people thought of that book and if it sounded interesting to me after reviews, and I specifically click on spoilery ones because I want to know the opinion, and I want to have the spoilers because usually those include writing, parts of the character, and parts of the plot that I want to know and don't consider a spoiler. Usually people will also say that if they go and talk about the ending, that it's the ending, and I don't necessarily mind spoilers unless it's a horror of a thriller or a thriller novel, because those hinge on how the books end. You should not get spoiled for the ending, but if the book does not necessarily hinge on its ending, it doesn't really matter a lot if you get spoiled or not. I don't necessarily consider that spoiling at all. It is to improve my reading experience by me not picking up a book I will probably not like, based on examples of the writing style, based on examples of how the characters act or are written. All that kind of stuff. I find that important. I want to have that in a book review. And I want to say, like, what I said before, I will now read what I point out. I want to see, and I like watching people who look at the book as a whole, who analyze it. Ariel Bissett is a great example of that. If she posts a discussion video, she analyzes everything, she thinks a lot about it, and that goes for the book she reviews too. She analyzes so many things, and I really like watching that because that gives me not only idea that she is an intelligent person, but also that you can have very, very intelligent, well-reasoned discussions with her, and that she will not shy away from explaining to you why she does like something you might hate, for example. She is not afraid of opinions, and all the people that give disclaimers, they seem to be afraid of what other people think, but it's just an opinion. Why think so much about it? If another person has a problem with you and gives you hate, it's their problem, not yours. Or in my case, if people are going to hate this video, it's not my problem. Because if they post hate comments, that's engagement for me, which means more people are going to watch my video. And a lot of hate comments, if you have the right view of it, they are just fun to read. Like, it's not my problem if you hate me. You have a lot of bottled up negative emotions. It's your problem. So why would I care if you do that? And go hand in hand, like, if you analyze the book as a whole, of course you talk about what you do and don't like in the book, and you give examples, and that is what people are scared of. They want to say that they like characters, but they don't really say about what they do and do not like about the characters if they have very specific gripes or parts they do or don't like, unless it's a spoilery review. And I seriously have watched reviews considered spoilery, like labeled spoilery, and I could like find one spoiler completely at the end of the review, and the rest I would not at all consider a spoiler in the first place. So why do people worry so much about this point? Most things that people say in spoilery reviews aren't spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled at all for a book, don't look up reviews in the first place. And that is why people don't watch it. They are afraid to be spoiled. But I mean, I want to spend my time reading books I like because I read extremely slow. It takes me a lot of time and I want to do other stuff as well. So I want to pick the books I like and that appeal to me. And usually I have a very good feeling for that. I can go to the bookstore, pick up a book that sounds interesting to me, and usually I like it. It has been like this ever since I was a child. I have read so many books I love and like, and so few I don't love and like. Honestly, I found more books I didn't like because of BookTube than before I even started BookTube. So, I don't know. I went back to my old ways of discovering books, which is just following my feelings, instead of following what other people say. Yes, sometimes a book sounds interesting and I look it up and I see what the actual summary of the book says. And sometimes I look up what a reviewer says before I start reading or even buy the book. Because I am on the fence of the book. I don't know if I would like it or not, and sometimes a review helps to decide. Sometimes following booktubers helps to decide or helps you discover more books, but I would not buy a book simply because one person recommends it to me. I would look up like what the book is actually about. Maybe if I like the writing style, a lot of times you can find samples of how the author writes, or you go to the store or the library and you look into the book. Maybe the writing style doesn't suit you. Why would you buy a book if you know beforehand that the writing style doesn't suit you? You can look up a page in the book and just look at how it's written, and you don't have to necessarily buy it. So, and I want to make one remark that's probably quite an unpopular or even shocking point, I think, and that is that a lot of younger YA booktubers seem to have SJW tendencies. And I mean with this that they want all minorities and groups represented in books. And don't get me wrong, I like some representation in books too. For example, I have autism and ADHD, but I belong to a lot more minority groups and a lot more groups that are not necessarily always included. But I personally don't care if my autism isn't represented perfectly. If it's represented and it is done in a consistent way and not just as a plot device. And I recently read a book I really liked, but it turned out that autism was used as a plot device to further the plot only at points where it was suited. For example, this is the Magician King. In which Quentin at a certain point says, "Well, sorry, this is my Asperger's flaring up." Asperger's doesn't flare up, it's always there. And that is literally the only point you get an overly exaggerated autism trait in the entire books. Except for like in the first book, because that is the second book in the trilogy, where another character is a little bit obsessively looking for information and it's described as autistically and semi-autistically. I could not at all appreciate that. Why would you use autism as an adjective? It doesn't make sense. I don't care if the representation is completely valid or not, if it is done completely right, so to speak, but I do care for it being consistent and not being a plot device. Like I do care for how a book is written. I can like a lot of different writing styles, but at a certain point it's too much. It's the same with using disabilities as a writing device instead of actually writing the characters all the way that way. Like, of course it explains some of Quentin's behaviors, but all of those characters are extremely smart. They have never fit in because they are way smarter than all the other people around them. So of course they're going to be alone. That doesn't mean you're autistic. You can be extremely smart and extremely social too. And you get less social if you are depressed, which these characters in these books are. So how exactly makes that an autistic person? I didn't get it. I did not read it necessarily. I loved the first book. It was amazing. But that was a point that I thought, why did you put that in? 2 times in a way that does not fit. But for the rest, I feel like if people put you in a box, which is what SJWs do, they want inclusivity for everyone, but in the meantime, to get everyone included, they put everyone in boxes. But no one is just one box, so it doesn't work. Because if you don't act the way people expect you to act when you have that certain label on you, they think you are not such a person, or not a good such a person. Like social justice warriors, quit putting everyone in a label. We are complex human beings. We don't need your boxes. We need your understanding. Like we need understanding from everyone. And I feel like regular people who are not parading that every representation needs to be perfect and that every box needs to be ticked, I feel so much more respected and valued by those people than I feel by people who scream that something needs to be written into a book more. And that gives books in which you get a feeling that the rep is put in there just to be there, and not because it has actual value and merit for the story. I have come across that several times in YA books. It rarely happens in adult books that it is just there for the sake of being there. Sometimes it's a book that is specifically about that topic, then of course it is there. But a lot of the times in YA books, it seems like it's there just to appease the audience instead of it actually having a value for the book. It's to make tick as many boxes as possible. Like you have an autistic person, an ADHD person, a black person, an Asian person, a person who is depressed, a person who has divorced parents, biracial people. Like sometimes there is so many representation in books that I think, why? And on the same point is, how accurate the representation is should not be the main focus if you rate and review a book. Your main focus should be, how is the plot developed? How is the story written? What's the writing style? Do you like it? Was it good or was it bad? How are the characters developed? Is it character driven or plot driven? And how did you like the way it was done? these kinds of things are important if you review a book, because these kinds of things are things people want to know if you review a book, because they want to read it and they want to know if it would fit their taste. And that is what annoys me and why I watch so little reviews from big booktubers. I don't get it. It feels like the reviews have even less value than the book reports I wrote in primary school when I was 10. And basically that was only one. We had to do one presentation when we were like 12. Those presentations were seriously better than the book reviews I see a lot of YouTubers do on the internet. And this might be offensive or sad, or people might get angry about this, but it's just the way it is. Giving only a summary and fake descriptions of stuff you did or didn't like is not giving a proper review. It's just frustrating the people who watch. That is why so few people watch. And I had some more points here and I will just read them. One point is unhealthy relationships, of course, are not okay, and they are put into books, but you can complain about them not being discussed, but they don't always need to be. Sometimes they are just there. I mean, people who read are not so stupid that after 5 years they can see that it was an unhealthy relationship and you should not follow up with it. A lot of younger readers already see it. Like, yes, books with unhealthy relationships are addictive for young people to read. Not for all young people, but for like quite a few females who read certain types of like steamy books, maybe? I don't know. I never really saw the problem. I was never really appealed to them, but I have talked to people who were, and they never really saw the problem until they were older. It was not as if they acted to it. They did not look for those relationships at all. They had a brain to know what they did and did not like, and quit the relationships if they weren't healthy or if they weren't happy. I think we worry way too much about these things. If something is interesting to read, it does not mean that people are actually going to follow it up. People are not that stupid. And if they are, that's probably because their parents didn't educate them well enough, or because they don't look further, like we say here, ze sjuggen het verder als hun nose lang is, or they don't look further than their nose is long. That is their problem, not the problem of the author. Readers have a brain. They can use their brain. They are not that stupid that they don't see the problems. So maybe we should just all chill a bit about this. And I get that if you have been in unhealthy relationships, which I have been with my father, it can be painful to read and triggering to read. It absolutely can be. And I have nothing against putting trigger warnings on a book, because I have done it before when it truly triggered me. Of course you should warn people that if the book has a trigger warning and they don't want to read books with certain trigger warnings, they shouldn't. But that does not mean that like every book needs to have like 10 trigger warnings and 50 types of representation and complaints about unhealthy relationships not being discussed at the end when that was not the main objective of the book. If the main objective is just relaxation and enjoyment, maybe that is not the right book to discuss unhealthy relationships. You should maybe look for a lit fic in that category, or maybe a different type of book that is more meant for discussion. You should not probably expect that in, erotica novels, because porn and erotica is not the place where you discuss unhealthy sexual relationships. It just is not. People read it and watch it for fun and enjoyment, maybe to listen a little bit to their fetishes, maybe? I don't know. Some people have very weird fetishes. And fiction is the perfect place to work them out, to read them, to watch them, and not do it for real, because they usually know it's hurtful and they won't do it for real, but that does not mean they don't fantasize about it. So Give people their space, they know it's unhealthy. Erotica readers are not that stupid, normally. Otherwise they would just watch it. And my last point I wrote down here is about unhealthy stereotypes. Are only as unhealthy, like the unhealthy stereotypes that are people complain about. Yes, they sort of exist, but also I heard one person once say like, this promotes unhealthy stereotypes about bisexual males. But guess what? I have seen a lot of bisexual or gay males fucking act that way. It's realistic. It's not an unhealthy stereotype. It's what a lot of gay people here do. And you know, those people know it's like probably not how everyone acts. It's a fictitious work. It should not be perfectly representing our world, because guess what? Then you can look in our world. You don't need to look into fiction for a perfect rep, unless it's, I would say unless it's a documentary, but that is non-fiction. Just like a non-fiction book, like if it isn't done right in a non-fiction work, fine. But if it's fiction, I mean, don't be so harsh, don't read it. You can rate it 2 or 1 star all you want and criticize it all you want, but maybe you should take into account it's a fictitious work. It's not meant to be 100% realistic. Especially when it is written to, or even made to just be enjoyed. So, and it happens in more often, like if you have a book that has lesbians in it that are only butch. I mean, that can, like I have seen whole groups of butch women. And the reason why you don't see like a feminine one is because they don't really stand out a lot. So maybe they are there. I mean, not everything needs to be there. The story needs to be enjoyable. If it is overly dived into rap that needs also to be discussed constantly, it does become a chore to read. At least to me it does. It is not fun anymore. And I read for fun when I read. Just like I watch stories and shows and movies for fun. I don't watch them all the time for everything to be perfectly correct, because it's fiction. I don't expect it, I don't watch it for that, I watch it for fun and enjoyment. So maybe everyone should do it too. And maybe, just maybe, I should stop my discussion right now, because I can see I've already discussed this for like over 20 minutes, and I feel like I'm rambling and repeating myself constantly, so I'm gonna say this is it for now. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, comment down below if you want to discuss further. And then again, thank you for watching en tot de keer.